Good afternoon. I am Daniel Simmons, the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. I am pleased that you are able to join us today for our webinar on federal water finance programs. Today's webinar is one in a series we are hosting as part of the Water Security Grand Challenge. As all of you know, water security is an important issue that impacts a wide range of sectors and industries. In a few minutes, you'll hear from some of my colleagues from other agencies, Dave Ross, Tim Petty, and Chad Roop. They will set the stage for today's larger discussion. I'd like to take a moment to thank them for their participation in today's program. It's an honor to serve with them as part of a wider interagency effort to address the nation's most pressing water issues. Water is a critical resource. It's necessary for human health and well-being, for agricultural productivity, and economic growth overall. One challenge we are facing today in terms of water is aging water and wastewater infrastructure. As we work to update this infrastructure, we need to be developing innovative technologies and processes that not only improve safety and resiliency of our water system, but ultimately drive down the cost. Let me talk about some of the work that we are doing at the Department of Energy to tackle these challenges through the Water Security Grand Challenge. In 2018, the Department of Energy launched the Water Security Grand Challenge, a White House-initiated, DOE-led effort to develop innovative technologies that address the national and global need for safe, secure, and affordable water. We established 5 goals to focus our efforts on. Goal 1, launch desalination technologies that deliver cost-competitive clean water. Goal 2, transform the energy sector's produced water from a waste to a resource. Goal 3, achieve near zero water impact of new thermoelectric power plants and significantly reduce freshwater use for existing thermoelectric power plants. Goal 4, double resource recovery from municipal wastewater. And Goal 5, develop small modular energy water systems for urban, rural, tribal, national security, and disaster response settings. DOE is working closely with our interagency partners to achieve these goals. We have created research teams for each goals, and we partner with other parts of the federal government, such as EPA, Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, USAID, Bureau of Reclamation, and FEMA. Some things that I'd like to highlight that what the Department of Energy has done on the Water Security Grand Challenge is last year we launched the $100 million, subject to a congressional appropriation, effort called the Energy Water Desalination Hub that's led by the National Alliance for Water Innovation that is focused on developing the energy efficient and cost competitive desalination technologies. We have a fish protection prize where the Department of Energy is partnering with the Bureau of Reclamation to improve water infrastructure by using new technologies to keep fish away from hydropower facilities. We have a Waves to Water Desalination Prize using the mechanical energy of wave power to drive desalination. We also have a Solar Desalination Prize using solar energy for desalination. And we also have a Wastewater Resource Recovery Prize to help small and medium-sized municipal wastewater treatment plants across the country recover more resources from wastewater. So these are just a few of the ways that we are working to improve our water infrastructure and address the nation's water security challenges. Today, we'll hear from our interagency partners and learn more about several water finance programs. I look forward to continuing to work together with our partners and with all of you to find innovative new ways that we can meet the national and global need for secure and affordable water. Thank you very much.
Techniques. So smart utility technology and communication is foundational to the rapid and effective response when inefficiencies are detected throughout the systems. Upgrading systems with SCADA, fiber optics, and wireless communications are especially important as they reduce the time to identify inefficiencies. We're focused on funding these technologies, which will conserve water for reuse. Under our water and environmental programs, we fund loans, grants, and technical assistance for smaller communities who are building or improving their drinking water systems, their wastewater treatment plants, and solid waste sites. Efficiency and conservation are just as important to these systems as they are to power plants. And again, we partner well with our other federal agencies, including the EPA, the Department of Interior, and others to solve community water shortfalls. Projects are usually funded with several federal and state partners at the same time, so we have strong working relationships with our state governmental agencies as well, who often partially fund projects with pass-through federal funds from agencies such as HUD and EPA. Our engineers and loan specialists are located in 47 state offices scattered throughout the United States, and also in many more field offices, in order to be able to partner early and understand the local needs. And once again, early communication and partnership will lead to strong results. Hal Nielsen from our WEP area is going to address some of these areas in his presentation here in a little bit to help supplement the information within the WEP program. Water security is also dependent upon good communication systems. So once we automate the detection and reaction, leaks, spills, and inefficient systems can be repaired in a more timely fashion, often reducing costs and allowing for better water conservation efforts. And I'll mention our telecom infrastructure program as well, because we offer significant support to broadband providers so that remote sensing and the corresponding response are timely and available. It allows greater reliability for rural water infrastructure where communications didn't already exist. In closing, I'd like to thank you as well as the Department of Energy for working closely with USDA to find solutions for a vital resource. Many people may not know this on this call, but as a resident of Western US and being a former community ag banker, I can say that your efforts have a direct impact on the entire food chain and the reliability of the electric grid, as well as water security. So I appreciate everything that you're doing because it does have an impact for our rural communities, especially out west. So with that, I wish you all the best and thank you for having me.
We can hear you.
Very good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name again is Tim Petty. I'm with the Department of Interior, Water and Science. And so that includes the water part, which is the Bureau of Reclamation, and the science part is the U.S. Geological Survey. And so it's a pleasure to be with Daniel Simmons today and Department of Energy, the great work that they're doing over there. But just to tie in the relationship that we have with the Department of Interior and the work that I know that Daniel's team works on at and with Department or the Bureau of Reclamation is pretty significant. And that really comes down with the Bureau of Reclamation's Title 16 program, which really deals with water reclamation and water reuse. And so our amount of grants and resources are much more in a smaller amount in a bucket. But with that, we're able to really help a lot of different programs across the West in their area of water reuse. And utilizing the Department of Energy's capacity has really been an incredible partnership. Because one of the three things that I really want to emphasize in my short amount of time is the idea of going from lab to pilot to practice. And Bureau of Reclamation is so much about getting and providing water to an arid West. And our major emphasis of the amount of millions of gallons of water is still not enough for all of the communities that we, since the early 1900s, 1902, have been trying to provide to these communities. And so with the new technologies that our group continues to make efforts to build upon, it's a great collaboration and partnership. One of the other highlights that I want to emphasize is just recently the memorandum of agreement and understanding that Interior Reclamation has with EPA, with partnering with them where we can on WIFIA. We're not the bank, but the expertise that EPA provides allows us to deal with this water infrastructure capacity. So we really look forward to that future relationship there as we work through congressionally an authorization and a president signing into law that ability for us to work in partnership. And that really has been so much of what this administration is focused on with both EPA and with Interior and with Department of Energy, Army Corps, and these relationships have been vital. And so one of the last parts of illustration that I want to deal with practice, kind of taking it from pilot to practice, is this idea that reclamation's focus is to bringing water to a certain point that then we exchange it, we can't not take it from onto the field. And that's why we work with so many irrigation companies across the West. But that means that we partner with the Department of Agriculture, and Bill Northey and U.S. Department of Agriculture and the field services have been fantastic in working with things that have failed. We have much infrastructure that is 50 to 100 years old that Reclamation has been working through and working with. And just these partnerships are critical in tying these type of water infrastructure components together. So I'm really pleased to be able to be partnering and part of this grand challenge that DOE has set forth. It is a big vision, and we love being able to come in and say, these are the areas that we can bring in our expertise to the table and partner with these other federal agencies so that the states can really serve their communities, whether it's agriculture, municipal, or industrial. Each of those really tie into even the components with tribal and their own independent work that they're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and give the mic back and see if there's any questions that you may have, but it's a pleasure for me to be able to join you today. Thank you.
Okay, hi, can everyone hear me? I think I'm off mute. I think so.
So Danusha, you should be unmuted. Okay.
Okay, good. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. All right. This is Danusha Chandy. I'm the senior engineer with the WIFIA program, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about the WIFIA program and how winners of the Water Security Grand Challenge might be able to participate in the WIFIA program. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So we always like to, whenever we're talking about WIFIA, we always like to take it back to our mission so that everyone's on the same page about what we're trying to do. The WIFIA program was enacted in 1914 by Congress to really help accelerate investment in our water and wastewater infrastructure. And the way we do that is by providing long-term, low-cost, and flexible credit assistance for eligible water and wastewater projects and borrowers. Next slide, please. Thank you. The eligible borrowers and projects for a WIFIA loan are pretty broad. Eligible borrowers include local, state, tribal, and federal entities, partnerships and joint ventures, corporations and trusts, as well as the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. There is a wide list of projects that are also eligible. They include your typical water and wastewater infrastructure projects, such as building new facilities or rehabilitation of existing pipes, pump stations, or treatment plants. Of particular interest to participants in this webinar could be the eligibility of desalination projects and projects to improve energy efficiencies of existing facilities. Next slide, please. Thank you. And to date, we've closed over 20 loans and provided over $4 billion in financing for infrastructure projects around the U.S. We've actually yet to close a loan related to desalination, but we have, as Dave mentioned, selected a few projects that are in our pipeline that we're hoping to work through soon. And we have actually worked through a couple of projects that deal with energy infrastructure at treatment plants. So we are looking forward to more projects like that in the near future. Next slide, please. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I'm not sure how familiar attendees of this webinar are with the WIFIA program. And this really presents a good overview of our process. So something to keep in mind is that the WIFIA application process is actually a two-step process divided into a preliminary project selection stage and then a more robust application phase. The first step, if we're starting up at the top left-hand corner of this slide, is when EPA releases a Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, which is how we let potential borrowers know that we're collecting letters of interest for the current funding round. We're currently expecting to release the NOFA for fiscal year 2020 funding sometime this summer. Once the NOFA is released, we expect to give you about 3 months to submit a letter of interest. A letter of interest should demonstrate a project's ability to be completed and constructability. We will look into creditworthiness and readiness to proceed. We also use the letter of interest to see how well a project aligns with EPA's policy priorities. EPA then expects to take about 90 days to evaluate the letters of interest and then select projects which it intends to fund. We then invite these prospective borrowers to continue to the application phase. The letter of interest phase does not have any fees associated, and it's meant to be a relatively, hopefully painless process in which borrowers who have projects that they're thinking about for the WIFIA program can put together a package to send it to us for selection purposes. Once a borrower has been invited to submit a full application, they have up to a year to submit the application, after which we do a detailed credit, engineering, and environmental review of the borrower and the project. We also work with the borrower to develop a loan agreement and term sheet prior to sending these documents up EPA's management chain and through the borrower's approval process prior to closing the loan. The application phase has been averaging about 7 months, but the duration really depends on the borrower and how motivated they are to close a loan. We have been known to close loans in as fast as 4 months, but that is, with a very motivated borrower. As I mentioned, the project selection phase has no fee. However, there is a $100,000 application fee during the application process, and borrowers must submit this fee along with their application package. Now, it's my understanding that winners of the Water Security Grand Challenge could use some of their prize money towards the application fee, and that's something that could be discussed in the future as well. There are also closing fees associated with the application, in which we use these fees to basically repay our advisors and during our due diligence process. The application costs, including the initial application fee, can range from about $120,000 to over $300,000, but that really depends on how complicated the project and negotiations are. Next slide, please. And here's some important program features to keep in mind. The first thing to keep in mind is that for most borrowers and communities, the minimum project size, so that means the total cost allocated to the project, has to be at least $20 million. Now, if you're a small community, which is a population of less than 25,000, the project cost can be lowered to $5 million. However, most of our projects tend to be pretty large, and I think the average cost is over $100 million for a WIFIA loan. And WIFIA can fund up to 49% of eligible project costs. The other 51% can be from a variety of sources, including any of the other federal finance programs that you're going to be hearing from today. But it can also be bond financing or PAYGO or cash or anything else a borrower would like to use for that 51%. The interest rate is set at closing, and one of the best things about the WIFIA program is that regardless of the creditworthiness of the borrower, so whether you're a AAA rated or an A- rated credit, you will get the same the same interest rate at closing, because the interest rate is only dependent on what the Treasury rate is for that date at closing. So that's a pretty big benefit to a lot of people. Projects must be creditworthy, which is what we spend a lot of our time doing, is evaluating projects and borrowers for creditworthiness. And federal requirements apply to WIFIA, including NEPA, Davis-Bacon, American Iron and Steel, and a whole host of others that apply to many federal programs. The maximum final maturity date from substantial completion can be 35 years. which many of our borrowers use to take advantage of to minimize their rate increase impacts. I think that's good. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. And this is a continuation of some of the features, but focusing a little bit more on the benefits. And so, as I mentioned, the interest rate is pretty low and is set at the date of closing and isn't really dependent on how creditworthy a borrower is, as long as the borrower meets the minimum creditworthiness ratings for WIFIA. We allow a highly flexible repayment schedule, so you can structure your repayment schedule the way you see would work best for your organization. And we've seen a lot of borrowers, push back repayment or stagger repayments in a way so that, again, they can minimize rate increases using a WIFIA loan. We are allowed to lend as a junior lien if you're interested. What this allows is for borrowers to save their senior debt capacity because, again, the interest rate doesn't matter for a WIFIA loan whether you're senior or junior. And so a few of our borrowers have taken advantage of a junior lien capacity with a WIFIA loan. There are some requirements related to junior lien usage with WIFIA, and if you're interested in talking more about that, we really encourage you to set up a meeting with us and talk about your project and your financing plan prior to sending a loan of letter of interest, so we can help you understand the requirements. And several of our borrowers use the ability to backload repayments, which is that you don't have to start repayments until 5 years after substantial completion of the project. So again, this can save you some money in the long run. And of particular interest to winners of the Water Security Grant Challenge could be the ability of a WIFIA loan to improve confidence from other lenders, especially when you're dealing with innovative projects. Having a federal lender on your team already increases your confidence and can be a risk reduction team member for your project. Next slide, please. And great. So as Dave mentioned, we're actually getting ready to put out our notice of funding availability for the funds that were appropriated to us for fiscal year 2020. We expect the notice of funding availability to come out this summer. And my advice to everyone who's interested in the program is to go onto our website and sign up to be on our contact list. We will notify our contact list immediately when the NOFA is released. So you'll be the first to know if you're on that list, and I promise we don't spam. So right now we have we're expecting to be able to provide approximately $5.5 billion in loans with our fiscal year 2020 funds. And this should help fund about $11 billion in water infrastructure investment. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to let you guys know that we're expecting to put out a webinar at the end of this month. If you do get the links to this presentation, we have a link in here. If not, it'll be on our website. And we do expect to be at some conferences in the near future. Particularly in August, we'll be at the Water Finance Conference, as long as it's still on. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see our contact information. Thank you. And so my information is here. You can feel free to give me a call or email at any time, or email the WIFIA email box. We monitor this regularly, and are really good at getting back to borrowers who have questions. The other thing I highly encourage is setting up a meeting with us. We can get a few members of our team together pretty fast and pretty often to meet with potentially interested borrowers to talk about their program. We might give you a little bit more of an overview, similar to what I did today, or get into some details that you were particularly interested in for your project or program. But again, questions are highly encouraged, and we are very accessible. That is all I had for today. I believe we have some time for questions right now, or I'll be sticking around for the whole webinar as well.
All right, thank you, Danusha. We do have a few questions that have come through the chat. One question is, with state and local budgets drastically decreasing due to COVID-19, this impact on the economy, is WIFIA changing any match requirements or an application fee?
That's a really good question. And unfortunately, WIFIA's match requirements and application fees, the match requirement is set through statute, so we can't change any of that, nor the application fee. So unfortunately, those aren't going to change. But one of the things that I really encourage, and one of the best things for your federal buck that I've seen through our program, is when our loan is combined with a water or wastewater SRF loan, and we're going to be hearing from the SRF programs in a little bit. We always tell people, if you can get your project funded 100% with an SRF loan, that's probably your best bet for your rate of return. However, not all SRFs are able to fund projects at 100%. And so when you're not able to, we really encourage people to think about WIFIA for whatever percentage of that project is unfunded.
Okay, great. Can you also mention what the current interest rate for a WIFIA loan is?
Sure. So the interest rate's really dependent on the Treasury rate, which has fluctuated in the past, 6 months. But I think the last loan, or one of the last loans we closed at, the interest rate was at 1.08%. So it's pretty good. And so we're getting a lot of borrowers who are in our pipeline coming into us right now, trying to get us to go through the process pretty fast so they can take advantage of these low rates right now.
Okay, great. Are there any application fees that are waived for disadvantaged communities?
No, right now there is no waiver of application fees, but as I had mentioned, if someone is going through the Water Security Challenge program and is has prize money accessible to them, I do believe that money could be used towards WIFIA application fee.
Okay. In the past, what percentage of loans were issued to corporations versus other categories? If you can ballpark that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been with the program since we started it, so fortunately, the 90 projects are in my head still. So we haven't had a ton of private corporations come through our program yet. There was in our first one in fiscal year 2017, the Maine Water was selected as a potential borrower, but they ended up not pursuing a WIFIA loan and ended up going to finance their project with their existing bank. And we are currently working through a loan for American Water in St. Louis. And Poseidon has been selected twice now. One project which they ended up not pursuing, which was an upgrade to the Carlsbad desalination plant. And one more project in California that hasn't come in yet with an application, but we do expect them to come in. So out of I think we have like over 90 projects in our sort of pool. We've only had a few corporations, but that doesn't mean that we can't select corporations in the future.
Okay. And then I think the final question we see so far, can the 51% non-WIFIA or the match funds come from other federal sources, or should they be all non-federal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do have a statutory limitation that any project that's funded through WIFIA or receives a loan through WIFIA can only have up to 80% of their project costs be covered by federal funding sources. What's interesting is, we most often work with the state SRF pretty frequently, and so state SRFs have an interesting mechanism in which many of their funds and loans are made through the revolving fund, which are considered non-federal funds. And some of their loans are made through the capital grant process. And so when we're working with a state revolving fund, and if the borrower is planning on using SRF funds for the 51%, we just make sure through the borrower and the SRF that the SRF isn't going to be using CAP grants for more than 30% of that project to keep within that keep within that 80% limit for funding for federal funds.
Question was, are federally owned projects or entities eligible under the WIFIA program, and is this being reconsidered?
Hi, yeah, that's interesting. And they aren't ineligible, which isn't a straight answer, I understand. But the complicating factor is that the way federal assets, our subsidy calculation for federal assets would be very complicated and probably wouldn't allow us to, in the last 2 years, we've been able to select about 38 or 40 projects out of the 50 or 60 projects that submitted letters of interest. If we were to select a federal asset, it would be a very, it would be considered 100% subsidized, which would eat up our entire allocation. And so currently, I think it would be difficult, though, I don't think there's a rule against it. So that's what's a little complicated about federally owned assets. But yeah.
We will move on to the next presentation regarding the state revolving fund programs. So Justin, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Justin Mattingly. I'm with the Office of Wastewater Management at US EPA in the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. I'll be kind of doing a joint presentation with my colleague from the Drinking Water Program, Howard Rubin. I'm going to start off with some was talking about some of the commonalities between the Clean Water and the Drinking Water SRF program, go into some more detail on the clean water side, then hand things off to Howard to bring us home. So moving on to the next slide. The main thing about the SRF program is that there are really 51 state-level infrastructure banks that make loans for projects. And again, there are programs for both on the clean water side and the drinking water side. So essentially, we're talking about 102 different programs. That includes all 50 states as well as Puerto Rico. So the way that these programs work is that all the SRF programs are capitalized by an annual federal appropriation as well as a state match. In addition, each state program does have the ability to leverage their fund through bond issuances. And this is done on a semi-regular basis, depending on the state, usually depending on the volume of interest they have in their program on any yearly basis. There are certainly some states, such as New York, that will leverage quite a bit. Other states, not as much. And on the clean water side, these infrastructure banks will essentially provide low-cost funding for a variety of water quality projects, whether it's wastewater, stormwater, non-point source projects. And on the drinking water side, it's primarily for, as you would imagine, drinking water projects. And there are some eligible set-asides that are unique to the drinking water program as well. And as is probably pretty obvious in the name of a revolving fund, as those loans go out, there are eventually repayments, and those repayments can be sent out again for additional loans in the future. So moving on to the next slide. So how are these SRFs structured? The main takeaway here is that they're really state implemented and operated. A lot of the policies, a lot of the eligibilities we'll be talking about is what's set at the federal level. However, there's always a lot of nuances that are in place with each individual state program. But in essence, each of these state programs there's an 80% federal appropriation along with a 20% match. When you add all that together, that equals about 83% of federal funds and 17% state funds. There's a lot of inherent flexibility in these programs, especially in the types of assistance that can be provided, the different loan terms, as well as a very broad level of eligibility for projects. Next slide. So assistance options for projects. The bread and butter of the SRF programs are really at or below market interest rate loans, generally that don't exceed 30 years or the useful life of the project. However, some states do offer the ability for extended term financing. The only limitation there is, of course, that we can't have loans that go beyond useful life of the project. But in addition to loans, there are some other options out there, including buying or refinancing local debt. Another unique one is the guarantee or purchase of insurance for local debt obligations. This can be really useful for communities that are looking to improve their bond rating when going out to market. Also, the SRF programs can guarantee loans for what can be known as sub-state revolving funds. There are a number of states that operate such programs. For example, a state could have their own state-operated revolving fund program for non-point source pollution, and the SRF does have the ability to support those other state programs. Another useful feature about the SRF programs is the inherent flexibility in repayments. On the clean water side, repayments aren't due until 12 months after project completion. And on the drinking water side, that's actually 18 months. That's a big benefit compared to the bond market. And much like WIFIA, there is the opportunity to kind of backload loans where you structure things so you're paying a lot less upfront and in those early years for a project. And lastly, there is some opportunity for additional subsidization for projects. Moving on to the next slide. This is where I'll be talking about kind of additional subsidization in some more detail. Beginning in 2009 with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the Clean Water SRF has been able to provide principal forgiveness, negative interest loans, as well as grants. That's really how we view additional subsidization. In general, the vast majority of this subsidization has been in the form of principal forgiveness, in which case you're essentially a community being given a loan, and right off the bat they're being forgiven a certain dollar amount for that loan. But there is also the opportunity for negative interest rate loans, which you don't see too much, as well as grants that will come out of some states. However, communities that do receive a grant through the SRF program will be subject to any federal grant requirements. So that's that's a big part of the reason why most states tend to move towards the principal forgiveness option. Additional subsidization on the clean water side is primarily to help address issues in affordability, especially to prevent rate increases for the community, as well as to implement a project that addresses water or energy efficiency goals, mitigates stormwater runoff, or really encourages an overall sustainable project planning process. On the drinking water side, they have a much longer history in additional subsidization, primarily for disadvantaged borrowers. But since 2009, there have been some additional authorities added as well. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, so the SRF programs were really created, well, at least on the clean water side, in 1987 as a way to replace the old construction grants program. So this is a really useful chart that was developed to explain to borrowers that, yes, these are loans, they're not grants, but are significant financial savings. And what you can do is compare what your market rate may be compared to what your SREF may be, and you can calculate an actual grant equivalent. In this case, let's say community X, if they went to the bond market, they would get an interest rate of 7%. But the SREF may offer them 3%. And what that would do is result in about a 29% overall savings. So let's say that loan was going to be for $100,000. In this case, going through the SREF program would essentially equate to a $29,000 grant. And a lot of our states use charts and different calculations like this to help market their programs and really to explain to communities what the financial benefit of this program is. Moving on to the next slide. So the application process. I wish I had a really good answer for all of you about what the application process for the SREF program is. However, because all these programs are operated at the state level, it's really dependent on the state. Every state sets their own priorities for how they for projects as well as loan terms. The main limitation there is that states loans need to be at least market rate, and in general are below market rate and sometimes at 0%. Applications for many SREF programs are accepted on a rolling basis, but again, this does vary from state to state. So if you do have questions about the specific application process, you will need to contact your state program. As these applications come in, all states are required to rank projects through a project priority ranking system. Each state is able to set their own unique system that will be based on their unique needs for water quality in their state. Many states on the clean water side do require projects to be funded in priority order, but in almost all cases there are options for bypass procedures, mostly in the case of readiness to proceed. A lot of states do want to make sure that money as it's available is loaned out in a pretty expeditious manner. And again, precise interest rates as well as fees will vary from state to state. Some states will charge fees for SREF loans. Some states don't. Again, it's really dependent on the state. Moving on. So now I'm going to talk into a bit more specifics on the Clean Water SREF program. As I mentioned before, this program has been around since 1987, and since then, over $138 billion in assistance has been provided. The average loan size is about $3 million. So generally, we can do a lot of very small loans. We can also do some large loans. These are really dependent on what the states want to do. There are some states, especially some of the larger ones, will provide large loans to many of their large borrowers. Let's think like New York City, but will also provide a lot of loans to small communities that may not have access to the bond market. Annual funding fluctuates from year to year, but over the past 3 years, it's been about $7 billion a year. A lot of our assistance do go to large populations. So about $60 billion have gone to projects serving populations greater than $100,000, but we do place a strong emphasis on serving communities less than 10,000 people as well. Out of the $138 billion, almost $133 billion has been for centralized wastewater treatment and conveyance projects. However, we have seen a greater interest in recent years for non-point source projects, and many states do have a very specific focus on those needs. Last year, the average interest rate for a loan was about 1.5%, and overall, since 2009, over $5.1 billion has been provided in additional subsidization, primarily to address affordability, but also to fund some really interesting and innovative projects. As was mentioned before during the WIFIA presentation, a lot of really innovative projects, whether it be innovative technologies or just various innovative practices that can hold a higher level of risk than more traditional projects. And the SRF has been a really great partner with utilities pursuing those strategies to help mitigate some of that financial risk. Moving on to the next slide. So who's eligible for a clean water SREP loan? Long story short, a lot of different types of entities, primarily communities, whether this be wastewater utilities, stormwater utilities, cities, towns, state governments, counties, are all eligible. In some cases, private entities are eligible. It really kind of depends on the type of project, as well as non-profit organizations, citizen groups. But again, the exact eligibility will vary by project type and by state. For example, there are certain project types where private entities are eligible at the federal level, but a state may have some limitations that prevent assistance going towards private entities. For the next slide. So these are the different types of project eligibility. I'm not going to go through each of those different items there. However, being that I am giving this presentation as part of the Water Security Grand Challenge, I do want to highlight that energy generation and conservation projects are eligible. All types of water reuse projects are eligible. Desalination projects are eligible, as well as resource recovery, and that can include certainly recovery of energy, but also recovery of materials such as phosphorus recovery is a pretty popular topic in some areas. Moving on. I do want to highlight some of our support for water reuse. As I mentioned, any type of water reuse is eligible, whether this be landscape irrigation, agricultural irrigation, potable reuse, stormwater capture and use, on-site non-potable reuse, essentially at a building scale, environmental restoration, and even a lot of privately owned facilities are eligible, including industrial reuse as well as produced water reuse. However, we have not seen too much assistance go towards private entities in the recent past, largely due to limitations at the state level. Obviously, a number of different drivers for water reuse are out there, whether it's decreasing demand for potable water supplies, having a new, more drought-resilient source of water, and in recent years, we've seen the need to reduce or eliminate wastewater discharges as being a big driver of water reuse. Next slide. I do want to highlight one case study real quick. This is Pure Water Monterey and the Central Coast of California. This is a 20 million gallon a day potable reuse facility for groundwater injection. What's unique about this project is that it utilizes municipal wastewater, stormwater, agricultural drainage, as well as wash water from agricultural processing. This is a really unique project and really kind of first of its kind, and it's being funded in large part by the SREF program. That's through an $88 million CW SREF loan at 1%, as well as a $15 million grant from California. So as I said before, while the average loan size is about $3 million, we do have some states that have the capacity for much larger loans as well. The next slide. So I was going to mention really quickly the Water Reuse Action Plan. I'm not going to go into too much detail because Dave Ross was already kind enough to be talking about this. The only thing I'll mention is that in the Clean Water SREF program, we are in the process of developing a best practices guide focused on water reuse to help provide a lot of states with some really beneficial policies and practices at the state level that can help support water reuse. So next slide. And the last thing I'll mention is that the CWSRF can provide a support for renewable energy and energy efficiency upgrades. And this can include anything from energy efficient treatment equipment, lighting, HVAC, electronic systems at treatment works, as well as on-site renewable energy generation, both from wind and solar, as well as methane capture and energy conversion equipment from, let's say, anaerobic digesters. And with that, I'm going to hand things off to Howard, who will talk about some of the specifics on the drinking water side, and then we'll both be available to take some questions.
Thank you, Justin. I'm Howard Rubin, talking about the DWSRF. The DWSRF is a younger program built on the success of the Clean Water SRF. It still has about 20 years under its belt of making loans. What I provided here on this slide is some parallel information to give a sense of what the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund has done. Average loan size of 2.6 million. The program funds in total about $2.8 billion of projects a year. We do fund some very large systems, about 11.8 billion for projects serving populations greater than 100,000. And the program has funding reserved for small systems serving 10,000 or fewer. Primarily, we do treatment and transmission and distribution, but there is a broad range of eligibilities for the Drinking Water SRF, with a low below market interest rate, 1.6%. And then one element that's unique to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is over the life of the program, we've given out approximately $3.5 billion in set-asides to support what I call the knowledge infrastructure of the drinking water sector. This can support training, this could support circuit riders, and basically non-infrastructure wherewithal, source water protection, exploration of where future sources of water may be, capacity development, and planning and design grants. Next slide. So juxtaposed to the Clean Water SRF, the Drinking Water SRF eligibilities are pretty straightforward. The funds go from the loan fund to drinking water utilities. There are some source water protection loans that can go to a broader audience, but since the water systems have a dedicated source of revenue in the form of their repayments, they're a very popular borrower even for those. But the loan fund is for drinking water utilities. Next slide. So the list of eligibilities for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is broad, and there are a lot of possible projects that can be done. States every year will generate a project priority list from the applicants that come in. They'll have state-specific scoring systems that focus on public health and give credit for affordability issues and some state priorities. One of the elements on this list I'd like to point to is water rights. It should, as you can see, I've put an asterisk next to it. Water rights, is listed in the program regulations as an ineligible component, but as access to fresh water as a public health need has grown over the years, the program has offered deviations from the regulation to prohibit this, where there has been a water rights project. Moving on to the next slide. This is a list of the elements of the program that are ineligibilities. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the program's primary focus is public health protection, with again points given to affordability. Projects cannot be primarily for growth, though a project can be sized for anticipated growth over its useful life. And again, inadequate supply is a public health criteria. So that's an issue outside of growth. Dams and reservoirs are prohibited by regulation, but again, project-specific deviations have already been approved where there is a compelling public health threat. Again, particularly dealing with supply, and the same for water rights. Lastly, fire protection cannot be a primary purpose, but generally a public health-driven project, can include fire protection measures where that's an ancillary component of the project. Next slide. So DWSRF support for renewable energy and energy efficiency. We can do projects that will reduce energy costs and improve air and water quality. Typically, these will figure include things such as installing energy efficient components, more efficient pumps, remote meter readings. We could do energy audits, pressure optimization studies, and on-site renewable energy. Again, a reminder, since the borrower will be the utility, the energy, any energy and energy efficiency projects are directly connected to the utility. Next slide. I'd like to point out that the DWSRF also does significant support for water efficiency. And we often view water efficiency and energy efficiency as going hand in hand. Water it's a very heavy substance. It's a very resource intensive substance both to move and to treat. Some of the water efficiency projects that we funded include, leaking pipe replacement, leak detection studies, water loss audits, remote meters, water conservation plans, and reclaimed water systems. Next slide. With that, we do want to open to questions for either Justin and myself about the Clean Water SRF or the Drinking Water SRF.
All right, well, thank you very much, Howard and Justin. Yeah, at this point, we can take some questions, and I'm not seeing any yet in the chat function. Oh, wait, let's see. Yeah, okay, great, we have one. Is there a list of these SRF projects that were for water energy savings?
So hi, this is Justin from the Clean Water Program. We don't have a complete comprehensive list of all of our projects throughout the entire history of the program. We are in the process of updating our databases in how we track projects. I'm not quite sure how much detail we've gone into the past specific to energy, but again, we've started to implement systems over the years. We don't have anything fully comprehensive. If you are interested in getting some more information about this, feel free to send me an email, and I'll always see how I can help.
And I would echo that. We can come up with certainly examples of energy efficient projects, but we don't have a comprehensive list.
Okay, let's see. I don't see any others coming through. I guess we have another. Will smart water systems be eligible? For leak detection? Not sure what. Yeah. Will smart water systems be eligible? We'll start with that.
So certainly on the clean water side, I want to say that this question is more relating towards drinking water, but certainly on the clean water side, various control systems are certainly eligible. So I don't see any reason why that would not be.
And I would echo that on the drinking water side. These are examples of leak detection and SCADA systems to do remote sensing have already been funded, so they are eligible.
Great. What are your thoughts on direct potable reuse systems for reclaimed water?
So on the clean water side, those projects are certainly eligible for funding. I should note that the second direct potable reuse system in the country in Wichita Falls, Texas, was funded in part by the Clean Water SREP program. I know at least in California, a number of the indirect potable reuse systems have been funded by the SREP as well.
And on the drinking water side, we would be able to fund any component that's connected to the drinking water system, piping it from having been treated or piping it to take it into treatment.
Okay, great. How is federal money allocated amongst the different state revolving fund programs?
So on the clean water side, within the statute that was written back in 1987, there is an allocation formula. If you go to the Clean Water SRF website, we do have a table that'll go out every year that'll detail the different allocations for each state. Being that these were established in 1987, there has been a lot of chatter over the years as far as revising it, but we are bound to the statute at the moment. In many ways, the larger states will be pretty much who you would think of. States like New York, Texas, California, and some smaller states like Vermont and Delaware would receive it on the lower end.
And the drinking water SRF works similarly. That the main distinction between us and the clean water SRF is there. Our statute, there is a need survey that's done every 4 years that takes a fresh look at the need as it's allotted across the state programs, and then the allotment of the total congressional allotment.
Okay, great. How about for PFAS treatment? What is the formula for increasing funding through SRFs for this particular chemical?
Well, PFAS is an eligible component for the drinking water SRF. So that they're part of the existing program.
I think in essence, the best way to have that question answered would be to talk to your specific state. Each state does set the priorities of the different projects that they fund. So it could certainly be possible that certain states will place a higher priority on PFAS projects. However, at the federal level at EPA, they are 100% eligible. We would certainly encourage states to fund such projects, but the actual priority that each is up to the state.
Okay, great. I'm getting some clarifying questions. So PFAS is eligible, but it is specific to states. I don't know. Can you just help clarify that a little bit?
Sure. So such projects are eligible to receive SRF funding. We don't have the authority at EPA to place different types of priority on such projects, as far as whether or not it will get funded. We can say whether or not it's eligible at the federal level, but it's up to the state, based on their specific state priorities, to determine which projects rise to the level of receiving funding.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let's see. I hope this addressed one of these questions. NDAA increased funding for SRFs to address PFAS. Justin or Howard, are you familiar with NDAA? What that acronym is?
Actually, the acronym escapes me, but there was I guess a recent legislation that set aside, I believe, some funding specifically for PFAS through the DWSRF. So PFAS is already an eligible expense, and I don't know the exact amount, but my understanding is that there is some grant money available specifically for treatment of PFAS.
Great. Yeah, actually, Bevan clarified. It's the National Defense Authorization Fund, and they added 100 million.
Okay, now there's the amount, I guess.
Okay, great. And then one other question I see. Let's see, repeating the renewable hydrogen fuel cell as an innovative project for clean water or drinking water RFP. Is that as a high risk? Do you have thoughts on this topic as being a high risk? Ed, if I'm not capturing that, can feel free to expand.
Well, I will say on the drinking water side, not speaking specifically to the technology, we can obviously fund, innovative projects that that deal with both energy and water efficiency. As Justin had laid through, the rates usually are not so much tied to the risk of the project, as long as the project is viable. And there is a dedicated source of repayment. So, risk is sometimes determined by state statute as, being a percentage of a market rate. All loans are market or below. So, as long as the project has a dedicated source of repayment, the fact that something is an innovative and potentially high risk new project typically doesn't play as much a role in risk determination.
So Ed did clarify a bit. Using hydrogen fuel cells for backup power and enhanced resiliency, how that might, yeah. So I'm just helping clarify that.
Yeah, I do know. I can say for the Clean Water Program, projects that do enhance the resiliency of treatment works are fully eligible for funding.
Okay,
And
great.
same with the drinking water side. Some states already do have existing power resiliency and power and backup power subcomponents of their program.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think we'll take this time to move on to the next presentation, and if you have other questions, we can save them for the end. Okay, great. So let's move on to learning more about the Rural Utility Service water environmental programs. Hal?
Thank you.
All right, Hal, it's all yours.
Appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this presentation and to get out and tell you about what the Rural Utility Service or rural development has to offer. The water end of this program that we have to offer started back in the 1940s, and it's been around for quite a number of years. It was administered by the old Farmers Home Administration. If you remember that, it's gone through a few name changes. Today, it is administered in the local area by what is known as rural development. Rural development is not an agency, it's a mission area. And part of the mission area of rural development is to handle the water and environmental programs that is offered through the Rural Utility Service. So, but the main thing to understand is if you're looking for it in a local area, you're going to find it under a rural development office. To start with, we take applications all year long. There is no application timeline that we go through. We have instigated and created an internet program known as RD Apply, where you can go in and make application to us online. It's available 24/7, and we'd be more than happy to lead that with you on that. And there is no application fee for us. If you want to go to the next slide, we have a little bit of a unique clientele, I guess, that we deal with, in that we're dealing strictly with rural communities. And the definition of rural by our regulation is a municipality or a town that would have a population of 10,000 or less. And recently, as of this year, they've included our guaranteed loan that we could go up to 50,000, whereas before we were always at the 10,000 level. So the programs that we deal with, we are mostly interested in rural communities. And if you look at the purpose, this is right out of our regulation. Yeah, we're here to serve the most financially needy communities with loans and grants. And the outcome, once our funding is in place, is that we should provide a reasonable user cost for rural residents, rural businesses, and other rural users. So in a nutshell, that is the reason for our program. It is to help rural America. We go to the next slide. As we look at what we've done, I want to start over on the right-hand side of the slide if I can. We basically have three types of entities that we can loan money to or serve, and that would be public bodies, private nonprofit organizations, and Native American tribes. The most important thing that with us here is that they have to be under local control and they have to serve the public. So public bodies, if you're interested, they make up about 80% of what our loan portfolio is. We have about 18% with nonprofits and about 2% with tribes as far as the type of recipients that we have. If I go over to the left-hand side, you're going to see there again that we finance water, sewer, and solid waste. Again, it's populations primarily under the direct program. We have to have a population of less than 10,000 people. And you can see there that in 2019, we invested 1.79 billion, and it had an impact of 2.3 million rural residents, these smaller communities. So what can we finance? We are interested primarily in the acquisition, the construction, improvements or what have you, whatever you need to do with drinking waters. This would include, source development or rehabilitation, treatment, storage, distribution, sewer or wastewater. We can work on the collection, transmission, and treatment. Solid waste, which would be your landfills. We can work on collection, disposal, and closure. Stormwater, we can work on collection, conveyance, disposal. So basically, any of the type of infrastructure that a small rural community would need, we can handle with this program. This program is administered on the local level. There are numerous local or area offices located throughout the United States. Again, if you'd look under a USDA service center, if you're interested in the program, you would find it there, but it's administered by 47 state offices. And you're going to say, now, wait a minute, there's 50 states in the United States. Well, some of the northeastern states that were a little smaller, we have combined those. And we also have a state office in Puerto Rico. Florida handles the Virgin Islands. Hawaii handles Guam and the Western Pacific Islands that we handle there. So on the local level, you should be able to find us. On the very last bullet there is we offer loans and grants in order to improve the life of rural America, which, let's go to the next slide. We'll go, besides the direct loan and grant program that we currently have, which is basically our bread and butter, Congress has given us some other special set-asides that maybe you should be aware of, because it may fit a certain niche or borrower that you may have, or whoever you may be, that may work for you. We have a set-aside for Native American tribes. This is a grant program, but we first have to determine if they can afford any loan. But there are special money set aside for Native Americans. The same is true for colonias. If you are known as a designated colonia and you're in California, Arizona, New Mexico, or Texas, there is a special funding pot for those of you who may not have running water or wastewater facilities in your community that we could help you with there. We also have what's known as the RAVG, which is the Rural Alaskan Village Grant Program, to help the rural communities of rural Alaska. We also have technical assistance and training programs. We fund, as part of this, on an annual basis, the National Rural Water Association. So if your state has a Rural Water Association, we help fund that. We also work with the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, RCAP or RCAC. They are known by different names throughout the nation, but we help provide funding for them to come out and do some of your circuit rider needs, as well as any training that you have. We also have another grant program where you would, this is an annual program where you would compete annually to determine how we can reduce the amount of solid waste that goes into landfills. We also have a small household water well and revolving loan fund, I'm going to combine those in that we're a private nonprofit corporation or could come in and become an intermediary lending person, where we would actually give you the money to set up your own revolving loan fund to in turn lend out to individual household owners. A big one that we have, particularly in this day and age, is known as ECWAG. This is a program that if we have a flood or a drought or an earthquake or some type of natural disaster or event, if I can term it that way, where we can come in and help you put back together your water system. The limits on that, it's $1 million. If we're talking about the source of water, say it was affected by whatever the event was, or if it was line, say a flood came in and took out part of your line, we can go up to 150,000 help on that. We have some regional economic development funds that are also available. SECD, that's Strategic Economic and Community Development. That is a loan and grant program that is sometimes funded and sometimes not. It was this year, but it's basically both the SECD and the REAP, which is the Rural Energy for America program. We're interested in basically to promote regionalization, to overcome maybe some multi-jurisdictional challenges. In order to get this type of funding, your community would have to have an improvement plan, wherein whatever you're proposing to do would be in that plan and how it's going to help the region that we're talking about, or the region or the service area that you're proposing to cover. The next two, which are SEARCH and PPG, you can read what they stand for. If a small community needs to put the project together, let's say the water facility is in pretty bad shape, and they didn't have money to go to hire an engineer to put together a preliminary engineering report, and didn't have the money to do the environmental review that would be needed, we have grants that are available to these small communities that would help provide money for them. It's $30,000 is the maximum. Search is for smaller type communities that are 2,500 or less in population. And the pre-development, both of them, they have to have a median household income of less than 80% of what the state non-metropolitan household income would be. But that has turned out to be a good program for us, because if a community doesn't have the money to put together a PER, preliminary engineering report, or complete the environmental assessment, which are required as a part of the application for our program, we can help them fund that up front. We also have some disaster supplemental funding that comes about. For example, right now, we have supplemental funding for Puerto Rico, Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and the Virgin Islands for what was impacted by Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria. And you'd have to be in that area and have to show that whatever the problem you had was as a result of the hurricane, one of those hurricanes. Next slide, please. This slide's again basically is telling you what our allocation is for 2020. You can see we run about a little better than a $2 billion program. We have the regular loans and grants, which again is 10,000 or less. We do have the guaranteed money that's included in there, which we can go higher on the income, or excuse me, population limits. We have other grants that you can see there, which is your pre-planning grants and your SECD. They're broken down. Technical assistance, which would be rural water. You can see what has been allocated for them. Special initiatives, that'd be the household water well and the circuit rider program, and ECWAG, you can see what we have there. But that gives you in a nutshell of what our allocations would be. Now you may ask, is there a loan limit or a grant limit? By the book, no, there is not. We've had loans up as high as 50 million, and the way our underwriting process works is we first determine how much loan a facility can afford to pay, and then we try to backfill it either with other funding. It may be applicant contribution, or it may be that we've got to come in with some of our grant money. As far as this year, if you want to know just the average nationwide from the 2020 allocation, our loan has been about 1.8 million, and the grant has been just over 1 million. But again, we have an average in some states that it's been 5 million on the loan side and 3 million on the grant side. So again, there's no really limit on that. It just depends on what's needed to fund the project. Next slide, please. You may be interested in what are our rates and our terms. We have an interest rate. It's adjusted quarterly, and it's basically tiered based on the need and the median household income of the community. As it sits today, we run from 1.375 or 1 3/8 to 2 3/8%. I guess I could let the cat out of the bag. Starting July 1st, it'll go 1 3/8% to 2 1/4%. We base that on the bond market, and it is adjusted quarterly. The term on our direct loan, we go up to 40 years, or the maximum allowed by state law. And the reason for this is we lend on the useful life of the facility and not the project. So basically, you look at a community that's, say, 100 years old. The useful life of the facility has already been 100 years. We're going to improve it and keep improving it and give the ability for the community to set aside money to keep it improved in our underwriting process. So we have a little longer term because we are basing it on what the useful life of the facility is. Guaranteed loans, we have the same thing here. That's up to 50,000, but the interest rate and the term is negotiated between the lender and the borrower. We are just there to guarantee it. Next slide, please. If you're interested in the last 10 years, this is just a map that would show where our projects have been funded. You can see areas that you're interested in and see where we've been most active. Next slide. If we look at the past 10 years, if you're just interested where our money's gone, because I'm going to stress rural here, we have served just over 2,000 counties in 50 states and 4 territories. We have improved the water or waste service to 26 million households and residents. Residents, and we've just $9.6 million of households and businesses have been benefited. We deal a lot in lower income rural communities. That's where our emphasis is. So you can see the average household income of the population that we've served is about 37,000. If you're wondering where our money was spent, 83% of our funding in the last 10 years have been for communities that have a population less than 10,000. You break that down even further, 44% of that went to communities that had a population of less than 1,000. So we are definitely here for rural America. In the past 10 years, we've done just under $20 billion invested. You can see that if you're wondering about the loan and grant mix, that's about 66 and 34. We believe in leveraging. We love to fund or partner with other federal funding and other funding sources. So we've got about 24% of our project have had some leveraging of some sort. We've done $134 million of guaranteed loans in the last 10 years. And with technical assistance, meaning Rural Water Association, Rural Community Assistance Partnership, American Water Works, I guess I should throw them there as well. We've done just right around 941,000 technical visits to facilities in rural America. If you look at last year's performance, let's go to the next slide. You will see that we served 2.3 million people. We have had 17,200 of new connections. We replaced 18,700 miles of line. A big thing in our program is projects are to alleviate health and sanitary problems that rural America may be having. And you can see based on this, 74% of what we funded last year went to communities who had a health or sanitary issue that needed to be taken care of. Again, we believe in leveraging. You can see the non-federal and the federal dollars, but roughly 21% of our projects are leveraged through federal and non-federal sources. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Next slide, please. I guess we can go there. Here is my contact information with my email address and phone number. If I can help you, I am here, or I can tell you where that you can go in your local area to find the services that you need. With that, I'm opening up for questions.
All right, thank you, Hal. We do have one to start. Would the REAP cover projects that would further process biosolids for beneficial reuse?
That is a good question. I would have to get back with you on that one. But you're looking at redoing biosolids, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm gathering.
I would say we probably, in part of rural development, have the business and industry program. That would probably be better fit for that. But I'm not going to say that we wouldn't rule it out.
Okay. Well, Bradley, feel free to follow up with Hal. We have another question from Ed. Is there a rural community or WEP funding available for distressed meat packing plants impacted by COVID-19?
No. What we are interested, or what we do any funding with, is potable water, wastewater, solid waste, and storm drain. We don't get into businesses or for-profit corporations or anything like that at all. So I'm not sure if the business and industry would have anything there as well. I know they came out with a CARES funding, but I'm not sure if you have to be one of their borrowers in order to qualify for that, which would include meat packing, because that would be a business.
Okay, great. I haven't seen any other questions come through, but if there are more, we can bring them up at the very end.
Sounds fine.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Hal. And so we'll move on to pass the ball over to Amanda and learn more about the WaterSmart program.
Thanks. Hi, so my name is Amanda Ira, and I work for the Bureau of Reclamation in the Water Resources and Planning Office out of Denver. And I am the Title 16 Program Coordinator and also the Business Studies Coordinator. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm mostly going to be talking today about the Title 16 Water Reclamation and Reuse Program, but I did want to just back up for a moment and highlight the overall WaterSmart program, which Title 16 is part of. So WaterSmart is a large umbrella program that includes a number of different activities and grant opportunities that you can see here on this slide. So we have our Basin Study program, WaterSmart grants, which are focused in large part on water conservation and efficiency. We have our Water Conservation Field Services program, which is mostly managed out of our regional and area offices. We have our Drought Response program, which is looking at providing grant funding for communities to proactively plan for drought. And that includes planning efforts and on-the-ground projects. And then we also have our Cooperative Watershed Management program, which is focused on providing grant funding for the development of watershed groups, as well as on-the-ground projects to improve watershed management. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'm going to focus on Title 16, which is part of WaterSmart. Title 16 Water Reclamation and Reuse Program is a grant program. It's been around since 1992. So it was around before WaterSmart, and then when WaterSmart was created around 2009, it got included as part of WaterSmart. So through the Title 16 program, Reclamation provides grant funding for projects that reclaim and reuse basically two types of water, wastewater and then impaired water. So for these projects either reclaim and reuse municipal, industrial, or agricultural wastewater, or they reclaim and reuse impaired ground and or surface waters. So that's the basic type of project that we're funding under the Title 16 program. You know, what that looks like in real life, we have a lot of different kinds of projects that fall within that. So back in the day, in 1992, when the program started, what most of our Title 16 projects look like was that first bullet under the example project there. So it was municipal, reuse of municipal wastewater, mostly for irrigation purposes. So watering golf courses, medians, sports fields, some agricultural irrigation. But that was sort of the classic Title 16 project when the program started. Over the years, as reuse, technology has advanced and reuse has become more prevalent and more widely accepted, what we've seen basically is a shift in the types of projects that are applying under the program. And so now we have a lot more direct and indirect potable reuse projects that we're seeing under the program. A lot of our indirect potable reuse projects are aquifer recharge projects, so where municipal wastewater is being treated and then recharged into an aquifer either through injection wells or through percolation ponds or wetlands. I know one of the previous speakers mentioned the Monterey project. That is a indirect potable reuse project through aquifer recharge. That project is also a Title 16 project that has received funding in the past through the Title 16 program. And then some other examples include the Pure Water San Diego program and the El Paso Advanced Purified Project are some of the newer big direct and indirect potable reuse projects that we see under the program. The appropriations levels for the program have been increasing in recent years. So in fiscal year 2020, we had about $63.6 million in appropriations for the Title 16 program as a whole. Next slide. So there are basically two types of eligible projects under the Title 16 program. When the program was first created in 1992, from 1992 through basically the very end of 2016, beginning of 2017, the way that the authority for the program is structured is that Reclamation didn't have general construction authority. We could only provide construction funding for projects that were specifically authorized by Congress. So basically, we had this universe of 52 projects that had congressional authorizations that were eligible to compete for construction funding under the program. Then in December of 2016, the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act was passed, and that act included amendments to the Title 16 program. We call that the WIN Act amendments, that basically opened the program up to allow new projects to compete for funding once Reclamation has made a few determinations about those projects. We make those determinations through our feasibility study review process, which Reclamation has actually been doing for many years prior to the passage of the WIN Act, but it already included the determinations that the WIN Act required. So that's basically the first step in the process and how a project becomes eligible for funding now. Next slide, please. So all funding under the Title 16 program, and really for all of the parts of WaterSmart for that matter, is allocated through competitive processes. So what that means is that we issue funding opportunity announcements on grants.gov inviting eligible project sponsors to apply for funding. Those proposals are submitted to Reclamation, and we then convene an application review committee that will review those proposals and score them against the evaluation criteria that are identified in the funding opportunity announcement that we posted. And the proposals are scored based on those criteria and then ranked based on their scores. And we use that ranking to allocate the available funding in a given year. Funding is available under the Title 16 funding opportunity announcements for planning, design, and or construction of projects. And it can be it can be one of those things, or it can be any combination of those things. So something that is a little different about the Title 16 program is that these projects can seek funding year after year. And so therefore, what we see a lot of times is when a project is just starting out, the project sponsor is applying for funding for planning work or some design work. And then maybe the next year, they're back and they're applying for funding for the end of design and the beginning of construction. And it goes all the way through completion of the project that the project sponsor can continue to apply for funding each year. Next slide. Okay, so the maximum federal cost share for any Title 16 project is 25%. So that means there is a 75% non-federal cost share required. That applies both to annual funding requests and to the project as a whole. So each year under the funding opportunity announcement, applicants can request up to 25% of the cost of the work that's going to be completed over the next 2 to 3 years. And then they can keep applying year after year, going out an additional 2 or 3 years until they hit 25% of the total project cost, up to a maximum of $20 million in federal funding. Projects must be located in a reclamation state or territory or in Hawaii. So reclamation states are defined by the Reclamation Act, and essentially it's the 17 Western states. So from the Dakotas down to Texas and then west, California. And then some amendments to the Reclamation Act did include some territories, including American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and the Virgin Islands. And then the Title 16 authority specifically includes Hawaii. So we do have some Title 16 projects in Hawaii, and projects in Hawaii are eligible. Pre-award costs are allowed, and that's, again, something that's a little different for the Title 16 program is how far back they're allowed. Basically, project sponsors can recoup the 25% federal cost share of all the work starting from the time that their project is either authorized by Congress or we transmit the feasibility study review findings to Congress. So basically what that means is that a project sponsor can keep competing year after year. And even if they're not successful, say the first 2 times they apply, on that 3rd time, if they're successful, they can still get the 25% federal cost share of all the work that they've been doing along the way when they weren't successful in applying for funding. The only caveat there, and it's an important one, is that NEPA must be completed prior to any ground disturbing activities. Otherwise, no federal funding can be provided for the project. So while project sponsors can keep working on their own schedule towards project implementation, they have to make sure that NEPA is completed before any ground disturbing activities in order to do that. Next slide, please. So that is most of the information I have on Title 16. A very related funding opportunity announcement is the WIN Act desalination projects funding opportunity announcement that Reclamation started offering in fiscal year 2018. This was another part of the WIN Act. It was the WIN Act included amendments to the Desalination Act of 1996, which gave Reclamation a new authority to provide funding for construction of full-scale desalination projects. So in 2018, and then again in 2019, Reclamation issued funding opportunity announcements inviting project sponsors of eligible desalination projects to apply for funding for planning, design, and construction of ocean or brackish water desalination projects. The basic requirements for these projects is very similar to Title 16. So there's, again, a maximum federal cost share of 25%. So there's a 75% non-federal cost share required. The federal cost share is capped at $20 million. The projects must be located in a reclamation state or territory. So again, those 17 Western states or American Samoa, Guam, etc. The one difference here to note is that Hawaii is not included here, and that's just because Hawaii is not included under the Desalination Act, and the Wynne amendments didn't add it. So that's one difference from Title 16. Under Title 16, projects in Hawaii are eligible, whereas here they're not. Similar pre-award costs are allowed, but in this case, they're allowed back to the enactment of the Wynne Act, which was in December of 2016. And again, an important point is that NEPA must be completed prior to the commencement of ground disturbing activities in order for a project to receive any federal funding under this funding opportunity. Next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight this. If you're looking for more information on WaterSmart in general, or the different programs that are part of it, or what projects we funded as part of WaterSmart and the different activities, Reclamation has a tool called the WaterSmart Data Visualization Tool that is available on our website. And this is an interactive website where you can go, you can get information about all the different parts of WaterSmart. And then there's lots of interactive features too. So there's maps showing all the projects that we've funded under WaterSmart. And there's lots of different ways to filter that information, or like limit your search to a certain geographical area to see what projects we've funded in a certain geographical area, and kind of how the program has grown over time. So if you're looking for more information on WaterSmart, I would definitely highly recommend that you go take a look at that. It's got a lot of good information. And I think last slide is up next. Yep. So here's my contact information. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions about Title 16 or about WaterSmart in general. As I said, I am the coordinator for Title 16 and then for the basin studies, but everyone, the group that I work in manages all of WaterSmart. So the other program coordinators for the other parts of WaterSmart are my coworkers in my group. So I can definitely point you to who the right person is to talk to for any part of WaterSmart. And with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you, Amanda. We're waiting to see any, no questions have yet come through, but we can get things started. We have some that we've put together. I guess, so have there been many projects for tribal lands or U.S. territories?
We have not seen any through Title 16 at this point. The Hawaii projects are kind of the most geographically dispersed, I guess you could say, for outside of the 17 Western states that we've seen so far. I think part of that is a function of the fact that, for the first 20 years of the program, roughly or more, you had to have a project-specific congressional authorization. So, most of those projects were very large projects, and it obviously takes some effort to work with your congressional delegation and get those projects authorized specifically. And I just don't know of any tribal projects on that scale yet. I think that the Wynne Act opening the program up hopefully will increase the diversity in the size and types of projects that we see in the program going forward. And hopefully we will see some more of those tribal project sponsors or projects in the territories.
Okay, great. Well, what are typical or average sizes of the grants?
Yeah, so, there's not a great answer to that, to be honest with you. There is no cap on the amount of funding that a project can receive in a given year beyond that 25% maximum federal cost share and the cap of $20 million total for the project. That being said, we've never given a single project $20 million in 1 year. The amounts usually range more depending on the year and how many appropriations how much appropriations we have and how many applications we receive. They range generally anywhere from about $2 million up to about $8 million in any given year.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you very much. And if others have questions, you can bring them up at the end. So I think we should move on, and yeah, we'll now hear from Michael on the Loan Programs Office here at DOE. Michael, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office. I'm the Chief Engineer, Loan Programs Office was established under Title 17 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, and be talking about our program and the authorities under this program with you this afternoon. Recognize I'm the anchor leg, so I'll try to be efficient with everyone's time. Next slide, please. The mission of the Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office is to accelerate the commercial scale deployment of innovative clean energy technologies that support our nation's clean energy goals. In particular, we provide financing for large-scale energy infrastructure projects that utilize innovative technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. While we operate very much like any private sector lender, LPO was established in order to take on technical risk associated with first-of-a-kind technologies. But we aim to protect U.S. taxpayers by only extending financing to projects that demonstrate a reasonable prospect of repayment. So to emphasize, we operate and function very much like the large institutional lenders, but we really are designed to take on technical risk and really limit our financial risk. So next slide. So we have a lot of experience catalyzing new markets. Since our inception, we have supported the development and deployment of over 30 projects in 18 states. We have invested over $30 billion and leveraged another $20 billion in private sector investment. So our portfolio today has a value of in excess of $50 billion. Our average loan size is about $1 billion, with the largest loan that we've extended to date being $8 billion to the owners of the Vogtle Nuclear Power Project in Georgia. And the smallest loan was $43 million to Beacon Energy. So due to the various fees associated with applying and performing diligence and closing, loans below $25 million are not really well suited from a cost benefit perspective for our program. With that in mind, we are best suited to engage with larger energy infrastructure projects. Next slide. So we can provide first-of-a-kind projects and other high-impact energy-related ventures with access to debt capital that private lenders cannot or will not provide due to the perceived technical risk associated with innovative projects. Some of the examples of the types of projects we have financed in the past and their catalytic impact on developing new markets include the following. In the early stages of the utility scale PV markets, we financed the first 5 utility scale PV projects deployed in the U.S. at a time when their technical performance was still unproven. The success of these first 5 projects served to give confidence to private lenders, and they then financed the next 45 utility scale PV projects in the U.S. Are there opportunities for us going forward in that utility scale PV market? Probably not, just because the private lending sector is comfortable with the technology and the repayment structures there. But we like to take credit for starting that industry in the United States. LPO played an essential role in the financing of the 2.2 gigawatt Vogtle Nuclear Power Project that incorporates the advanced AP1000 reactor technology. And this is the first nuclear power project to be built in the United States in the last 30 years. We financed the first 4 land-based wind energy, not the first 4, but we financed 4 land-based wind energy projects, including the 845 megawatt Shepherd Flat project. And we provided the initial funding to Tesla that helped the startup of this EV manufacturer. Due to Elon Musk's ability to raise capital, he quickly repaid that loan, but we were one of the early partners with Elon Musk and Tesla. These projects represent just some of the innovative leading edge energy infrastructure projects we have supported since the program's inception. Next slide. I've incorporated this into the next slide so we can move on. Thank you. LPO currently offers 5 lending vehicles under 3 programs with over $40 billion available in loan and loan guarantee authority. Our Title 17 Innovative Energy Loan Guarantee Program has 3 active solicitations. We have $8.5 billion available for advanced fossil energy projects, and this includes carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects. We have $8.8 billion available for advanced nuclear energy, and we have up to $4.5 billion available for renewable energy and efficient energy projects. And it's this area that is most relevant for water infrastructure projects that I'll talk more about coming up. We also have a tribal energy loan guarantee program that aims to provide or expand electricity or other energy services, such as generation, transmission, energy storage projects, or enhanced energy resource extraction or processing, such as mining, oil and gas, biofuels or chemicals to tribal entities. And then finally, our ATVM program supports the domestic manufacturing of light-duty vehicles and eligible components that demonstrate improved mileage efficiency. So again, that totals more than $40 billion in remaining loan and loan guarantee authority through these 3 general categories. Next slide. So Title 17 requires 4 principal eligibility requirements and to be eligible under our Clean Energy Loan Guarantee Program. And the first is that eligible projects must utilize new or significantly improved technology or systems. And the technology may be commercially accepted outside the United States, but if it is one of the first 3 deployments of the technology in the U.S., it would be considered innovative. So the bar is not really that high as long as there is a measurable improvement in efficiency or process, it would be considered an innovative technology as far as our statute goes. Second, the project must demonstrate that it reduces, avoids, or sequesters greenhouse gases. And we perform a comprehensive greenhouse gas life cycle analysis in order to determine the level of reduction as compared to the business as usual case for producing the same product. So there has to be a measurable reduction in GHGs. Third, the project must be located in the U.S., and that includes U.S. territories, but the project may be foreign owned. And then finally, the project must demonstrate a reasonable prospect of repayment. The best projects have offtake agreements that match or exceed the term of the loan and support the repayment of the loan, principal, and interest. It's important to note that the source of repayment cannot be another federal entity. So if we had a solar project developer that intended to sell electricity to a military base, as that military base would be considered another federal entity, that project would not be eligible. The way the program has been established, we can't have the federal government paying off a federal loan. So that's really the biggest restriction that we have and some of the challenges that we run into. But just wanted to point that out. Next slide. So I see a lot of opportunities for financing water infrastructure projects, especially under our Title 17 Renewable Energy Program. The first being new hydropower development. As it's been over 30 years, a new hydropower facility has been built in the U.S. Virtually any new project could demonstrate innovation over that currently deployed in the U.S. And considering the evolution of pump storage hydropower around the world, we also see opportunities for pump storage as part of this program. Opportunities also exist for hydropower and pump storage projects that are facing relicensing. These facilities represent critical energy infrastructure assets, and we can play a role in not only supporting the relicensing process, but also additional uprates or upgrades that may be pursued as part of that relicensing process. we're working with a number of entities in the nuclear sector that are going through this relicensing process. And as they go through that, they take a look at how they can either upgrade their equipment or add additional equipment to increase their overall output or other safety features. And, we can finance that whole process. Third, desalination projects. These tend to be very large energy consumers, and the underlying technologies continue to become more energy efficient. Furthermore, large-scale desal projects can require investments of up to $1 billion, and these represent key opportunities for LPO engagement. So, these large, billion-dollar, close to $1 billion projects are really right in our sweet spot. Next is water treatment facilities. Many new water treatment facilities are now designed to conserve, recover, and/or generate energy as part of their treatment process. So these types of infrastructure projects could be eligible for LPO financing. And I just point out, although LPO has not yet extended financing to any water infrastructure projects to date, we are actively seeking out opportunities in this space, and we're anxious to close our first water infrastructure project deal by the end of the current calendar year. So if anyone has any leads or is aware of projects that are looking for financing, please send them our way. Next slide. We can skip this. Next slide. Thanks. We have a very structured application process, very, very similar to what was discussed by the last presenter under the Title 16 process, but we encourage applicants to pursue a pre-application consultation with us, and it really begins the conversation directly with our staff about the project and our process. So before applicants submit an application fee of $50,000, they know what they're entering into, and we can talk to them about what their current conception of the project is and how it might need to be sculpted or modified to meet our expectations and needs. So, and that's really a free call or free number of calls, and we can engage very, very early in the project development phase with potential applicants. There is a $50,000 Part 1 application fee in which we determine basic eligibility, those 4 core eligibility requirements I previously discussed. That application fee is not applicable to our advanced technology vehicle manufacturing solicitation, but it's really designed to help cover our costs for performing the basic eligibility review. And we aim to complete these reviews within 30 days, and we are very different than the grant programs in that, when someone applies for a grant, that's really when the communication stops, and the department would go into its review, and the next time the applicants would hear from the Department of Energy would be when selections are made. As far as LPO and our process goes, if we get an application, and since it's a loan process, we can go back to the applicant and ask for additional information or ask for clarifying information that really helps us move towards getting to yes. We recognize that with the application fees, we have an obligation to try to work with the applicants to get to yes. So that's really when the dialogue really picks up with applicants in this process. Assuming the project passes the basic eligibility requirements, they'd be invited to submit a Part 2 application in which we evaluate the creditworthiness and the technical relevance and merit, the technical approach, work plan, construction plans, et cetera, of the project. And depending on the loan amount, there's a Part 2 application fee that's required, either $100,000 if the project is requesting a loan of $150 million or less, or it's a $350,000 fee if the loan is in excess of $150 million. Again, that process typically takes 30 to 60 days. And again, if we have questions or there's insufficient information provided by the applicant in that application part 2, we can go back to the applicant and ask for more information. Again, with the aim of trying to get to a positive determination on the application. After passing all the part 2 requirements, we would invite the applicant to due diligence and underwriting. And this is where we really originate or initiate the loan guarantee and underwriting process. Now, in this process, we would retain an independent engineer and legal counsel. We'd pick up a market advisor if a market analysis was deemed appropriate. And we also perform a NEPA analysis as required. And the way LPO is structured, we have our own engineering division, we have our own origination division, we have our own legal division, we have our own environmental compliance division. So we can handle all of these processes efficiently within LPO itself. And I'd also add that this process really mimics that of most large institutional lenders. And in this phase, we work with the borrower to structure a deal that gives us confidence that the loan can be repaid. We are willing to take that technical risk of a first-of-a-kind technology, but we're really trying to protect the taxpayer and get confidence that that loan can be repaid. After completing due diligence, we are the conditional commitment phase of the process, and we would here's when we would secure approvals from the department's credit review board. We'd run it up to the highest levels within the Department of Energy and ensure that they're aware and informed and comfortable with us extending the loan to the applicant. Once all the approvals are secured, we enter the loan closing process and negotiate the final loan agreements, and then we would release the initial funding for construction. So the applicant can take draws during the construction phase. Once the project comes online and begins generating revenue, that's when the loan repayment would begin. So that's an overview of our application process. Next slide. Thank you. Some of the financial terms that we use and how we define them. A loan guarantee can support debt from a commercial lender or the U.S. Treasury. So we can either be a direct lender or we can guarantee a loan from another lender if the borrower has a bank that they're more comfortable working with. The long-term financing is available based on the useful life of the asset, and that's typically up to 30 years. Interest rates are set based on equivalent U.S. Treasury rate plus a credit-based spread. We weren't established to compete with these large institutional lenders, but we do offer more competitive interest rates, and over a period of 20 to 30 years, that can be a big decision for some of these borrowers. As far as equity goes, LPO can only guarantee up to 80% of the total project cost. But if you look at our portfolio as a whole, most projects have at least 35% equity. But by statute, we can lend up to 80% of the total project cost. And co-lending with commercial lenders is encouraged, but it's not required. And this is part of our drive to get private lending institutions comfortable with these new technologies. And if we bring them on early in the process, get them comfortable and acquainted with these technologies early on, there's a greater likelihood that the next or the project after that they have more of an appetite to participate in. Next slide. Apologize for the small font. You can read all of this at another time, but we are required to collect several fees from Title 17 loan program applicants. And our solicitations go into much greater details about the fees and these amounts, which are specific to each project. But in general, our application fees cover the department's costs for performing our eligibility and viability reviews. Our facility fees cover our costs of performing due diligence, and an applicant, whether they went to us or Chase or Santander, they would be picking up those costs of the lender's advisors, whether it's us or them. Maintenance fees cover our costs of servicing and monitoring the loan until the loan is repaid. We're engaged with these borrowers through the life of the project, and those maintenance fees cover our costs of servicing. There's also a credit subsidy cost, and this is similar to points paid on a mortgage, but are based on the perceived market risk of the loan. So it could be, take into consideration the volatility of the offtake agreement, the term of the offtake agreement, the volatility of the market in which they're playing into. So, there's a credit subsidy cost that, again, most any lender would apply as part of the loan process. So, again, we're structured very much like these large institutional lenders. Next slide. So potential applicants are encouraged to contact DOE staff to request a pre-application consultation and learn more about our process and requirements. And they can reach us either through that email address or that phone number. And we are happy to set up any number of introductory and pre-application consultations with potential applicants. People are invited to learn more about us at energy.gov/LPO and all of our solicitations, how the process works, information about our existing portfolio can be found there. And then I also included a direct link to our renewable energy and efficient energy projects solicitation. So, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Loan Programs Office. It's been very informative for me to learn about what our partners and the other agencies are doing, and look forward to working with potential applicants and this team going forward. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Michael. And again, we'll remind our attendees, if there are any questions, feel free to use the Q&A chat function. We do have one question. Are there any finance programs that could support water data or water data infrastructure improvements?
Most of our projects are based on producing energy or conserving energy. There's an energy component to that, so I'm not quite sure what the question is getting at, but I don't think so, based on my understanding of the question.
Okay, great, thank you. I think I don't see any other questions coming through, but I think at this point, in the interest of time, we can open it up to. Okay, thank you, Kristen. We can open this up to the rest of the panelists. And Kristen, actually, her question on data, water data and water data infrastructure, feel free to any of the panelists, if you can comment on funding within your own programs for that particular topic. And you should be able to unmute yourself if you have a comment.
This is Howard Rubin with the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. With data, the DWSRF through the set-asides, can fund state data efforts as they relate to the state's overall public water system support program, or specific software for the goals of improving drinking water quality. EPA also separately has an Office of Environmental Information that has competitive grants. I don't have all the details on them. I know that they're to some degree about connectivity between state data systems and EPA data systems. But that's another example of where there's funding for data needs.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, we will be posting these slides. So if there are further questions, the contact information for the presenters will also be included. So I want to thank again our panelists and federal leadership for participating in today's webinar. We also want to thank all the attendees too for listening and participating. And so here we are listing the contact information for our two co-leads on this project, Diana Bauer and Kevin Jane. And as a reminder, this will be posted later on the Water Security Grand Challenge website. Our next webinar is under development, so be on the lookout for that announcement and call-in information. And so with that, we will conclude this webinar and hope to welcome you to the next one in a few weeks. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.